Um, so it was more to control emotions. It's a surprise for everybody, except maybe to me.
The comeback conversation has moved from tournaments to medical permission. Ferrero, remembering the old workload battles, Nadal's doctor, examining the wrist, Alcaraz, watching Sinner take control. That makes today bigger than one appointment. If Ferrero finally reveals what Ruiz-Cotoro will tell Alcaraz, the evidence has not reached the public. The real story sits inside the suspicion that his team is hiding something because no exact diagnosis or return date has appeared. That suspicion grew when Alcaraz ran without visible wrist support. Fans treated the footage as a comeback signal, although running proves little about absorbing the force of a serve. That uncertainty now drives the argument. Ferrero's relevance comes from history, not secret access. He built the champion, argued for balance, and left before this injury removed Alcaraz from the tournaments where his rivalry with Sinner mattered most. Ruiz-Cotoro now occupies the uncomfortable position Ferrero once held, telling a joyful competitor when desire has moved faster than recovery. This could change how you judge the current team. Their silence may look controlling, yet one careless promise could pressure Alcaraz toward another breakdown. Subscribe and tell me which side you trust before the verdict arrives. Now let us uncover what this examination truly means. The examination can answer something far more important than whether Alcaraz feels better during an ordinary morning. It can show whether the injured wrist is ready to accept the type of force that professional tennis repeatedly sends through the joint. Running tests fitness. Hitting tests the structure that failed him. Those are completely different measurements, which is why a short training clip could never deliver the verdict fans wanted. Ruiz-Cotoro must look beyond visible comfort. Alcaraz may be able to move freely, complete demanding cardio sessions, and perform gym exercises without wearing obvious support. None of that guarantees he can strike hundreds of forehands, control a racket during defensive contact, or serve at full speed without provoking another reaction. Match play introduces late contact, awkward reaches, and instinctive movements that cannot always be recreated safely during early rehabilitation. That is what the appointment truly means. The doctor is not simply deciding whether pain has decreased. He is assessing whether the wrist has healed enough for the workload to increase without turning a temporary injury into a recurring weakness. Several outcomes remain possible. A positive examination could allow Alcaraz to begin controlled hitting with a restricted volume. A cautious result might keep him on physical conditioning while delaying racket work. Any concerning response could require more rest, further imaging, or an adjusted rehabilitation plan. None of those possibilities confirms surgery, permanent damage, or a hidden retirement threat. They only explain why his team cannot responsibly choose a return date before the wrist passes the necessary stages. This is where Nadal's name changes the emotional weight of the story. Ruiz-Cotoro did not become important to Spanish tennis because he offered easy answers. His reputation grew during years spent helping Rafael Nadal manage a body that repeatedly challenged his ambition. Nadal became the established king through his ability to compete with extraordinary intensity, but his later career also became a lesson in the limits of desire. He could accept pain during a match. He could not command injured tissue to heal according to the tournament calendar. Alcaraz is the hungry successor who inherited the expectations without inheriting Nadal's patience. His public identity has always been built around joy, movement, and the belief that tennis should feel alive. He chases shots that other players leave alone. He changes direction when the safe option is available. His best tennis appears when freedom replaces caution. That instinct makes him spectacular. It also explains why medical permission matters so much. A naturally careful player may accept a gradual return without feeling that part of his identity has been removed. Alcaraz experiences the court differently, restricting his movement, reducing his aggression, or asking him to protect one side of his body changes the emotional language of his game. A comeback only works if he can trust the wrist enough to remain Carlos Alcaraz. Nadal understands that conflict because he lived inside it. He has spoken about the importance of making decisions for the length of Alcaraz's career rather than the urgency of one tournament. His experience also offers reassurance. A wrist problem does not automatically become a lifelong condition. Recovery remains possible when the biology is respected and the competitive timetable stops controlling the decision. The contrast between them forms the deeper story. Nadal represents the knowledge earned after years of physical battles. Alcaraz represents the impatience of a champion who still believes every important event should include him. Ruiz Cotoro stands between those positions, carrying the responsibility to tell the younger player something champions rarely want to hear. Feeling ready is not the same as being ready. The wrist first changed the season in Barcelona. Alcaraz entered the event shortly after losing the Monte Carlo final to Jannik Sinner, a result that also shifted the balance at the top of the rankings. Barcelona offered a quick opportunity to respond. Instead, it became the place where the chase stopped. During his opening match against Otto Virtanen, Alcaraz felt the right wrist give way. The discomfort increased as the contest continued, although he still completed a straight sets victory. That result initially softened the alarm. Fans saw a successful scoreline and assumed the body had survived. The next day destroyed that assumption. Medical tests showed the problem was more serious than Alcaraz and his team had first expected. He withdrew before facing Tomasz Machach. The victory over Virtanen suddenly looked less like proof of fitness and more like evidence of how easily a top player can compete through a problem before understanding its seriousness. That was the viral moment that changed everything. It was not a dramatic collapse at match point. It was a champion finishing his work, speaking afterward, and then learning that the match had taken more from him than the scoreboard revealed. Alcaraz admitted that the discomfort had gradually increased. He also said he believed he had experienced something similar before and did not expect it to become worse. That detail matters because it removes the idea of a known disaster being concealed from the beginning. The player himself did not immediately understand what was happening. The Madrid withdrawal followed. Alcaraz described Madrid as home and acknowledged how painful it was to miss the event for a second consecutive year. His words carried disappointment, but they offered little medical detail. Fans knew the location of the injury and understood that tests had raised concern. They still did not know which structure was damaged or how much recovery time would be required. Rome then disappeared from the schedule. Roland Garros went with it. Missing Paris changed the scale of the story. Alcaraz was not an outsider hoping to participate. He was the defending champion whose previous final against Sinner had become one of the defining matches of their rivalry. The player associated with surviving impossible situations could not even enter the arena where his reputation had grown. His social media announcement became the next turning point. Alcaraz said the cautious choice was to withdraw while his team continued assessing the injury's progress. He called it a difficult moment and expressed confidence that they would come through it stronger. The message confirmed the seriousness of the situation without satisfying the public demand for certainty. No anatomical diagnosis appeared, no scan result was shared, no target tournament was named. That absence allowed two interpretations to develop. Supporters saw a team protecting a young champion from external pressure. Suspicious fans saw carefully selected language designed to avoid revealing the full severity of the problem. Both groups worked from the same post because the post offered emotion without medical specifics. Roland Garros publicly wished Alcaraz well and said the tournament would miss him. That response made the withdrawal feel larger than one player changing his schedule. Tennis had lost one half of its central rivalry at a tournament carrying major ranking and historical consequences. Queens and Wimbledon later joined the list. Alcaraz reported that his recovery was progressing and that he felt much better, but he also admitted he was not ready to compete. Those two pieces of information sounded encouraging. Separately, together, they showed why improvement could not be treated as clearance. The phrase "much better" describes movement from a worse condition. It does not confirm full recovery. A player can improve significantly and remain unable to tolerate professional competition. That distinction became lost as every photograph, video, and brief update traveled through social media. Then the footage of Alcaraz running without visible wrist support appeared. Optimism moved quickly. Some fans interpreted the missing support as evidence that the injury had nearly healed. Others questioned why a player who looked physically active still had no return date. The clip became more powerful than it deserved because it appeared inside an information vacuum. Running showed that Alcaraz could continue building his lower body fitness. It did not show whether he could control the racket at full speed. A wrist can remain quiet during cardio and respond badly when repetitive impact begins. The footage proved progress, but social media upgraded it into a comeback signal. That one shift changed the public conversation. Attention moved away from whether Alcaraz was improving and toward what his team might know but had not disclosed. Every missing detail began to look intentional. Caution started resembling secrecy. His celebrity status made the silence even more noticeable. Alcaraz is not merely a highly ranked tennis player working privately through rehabilitation. Nike builds part of its tennis image around him. Rolex presents him as a symbol of elite achievement. Babolat sells rackets linked directly to his name and playing identity. The Babolat connection creates the sharpest contrast. Alcaraz helps sell the weapon that made him famous, yet the wrist controlling that weapon has not publicly demonstrated that it can survive competition. The biggest brands can show old victories, polished campaigns, and confident photographs. None of those images can answer the medical question. Celebrity encourages fans to believe they know the person because they see him constantly. Injury reveals how much remains private. Sponsors can display the champion. The medical team must protect the patient. That difference is where the accusation of hiding begins, but it is not proof of dishonesty. Athletes rarely publish complete imaging reports. Return dates often remain flexible because recovery does not follow a perfect schedule. A team may avoid naming a target because the player could interpret it as a deadline, the media could transform it into a promise, and sponsors could build expectations around it. One date can become pressure before it becomes a plan. Ferrero understands that pressure better than almost anyone around this story, which explains why his name remains relevant even without secret access to the examination. He began coaching Alcaraz when the player was 15. Their partnership lasted 7 years and transformed a gifted Spanish teenager into the leading figure of a new tennis generation. Ferrero saw the private work behind the public smile. He understood how quickly Alcaraz could turn enjoyment into momentum, and he also knew how difficult it could be to slow him down. Their relationship produced major titles, the #1 ranking and success across every surface. It also contained disagreements about the balance between freedom and professional demands. That history gives Ferrero authority when fans ask what Alcaraz may be thinking. It does not give him the medical results. The distinction is essential. Ferrero and Alcaraz ended their coaching partnership in December 2025. The separation shocked tennis because their success made the relationship appear permanent from the outside. Ferrero later explained that they did not agree on the conditions required to continue. He kept the exact internal details private, although he acknowledged that family and the surrounding environment may have influenced the situation. Those comments encouraged speculation about control inside Alcaraz's camp. They did not establish that the family forced Ferrero out or that the current team has mismanaged the injury. The breakup involved unresolved differences, but the evidence does not support turning every later decision into proof that Ferrero had predicted disaster. His emotional response made the story more complicated. Ferrero admitted that watching Alcaraz play could still hurt because he wanted his former player to succeed while feeling the sadness of no longer sharing those moments. He said he wanted to see Alcaraz, give him a hug, and eventually have the conversation that remained unfinished between them. That does not sound like an enemy preparing to expose him. It sounds like a mentor trying to understand life after a relationship that shaped both men. Social media turned that private adjustment into another public controversy. Fans noticed that Ferrero had unfollowed Alcaraz on Instagram while Alcaraz continued following him. The action looked cold when separated from its explanation. Some treated it as proof of resentment. Others assumed Ferrero wanted to erase his former player after the split. Ferrero said the decision was not made out of spite. He explained that Alcaraz appeared everywhere on his feed through tennis accounts and tournament coverage, making emotional distance almost impossible. Unfollowing one account could not remove Alcaraz from his screen, but it showed how deeply the breakup still affected him. That Instagram detail became a plot point because it placed Ferrero visibly outside Alcaraz's world. He had once stood inside the box during the most important matches. Now he was trying to avoid seeing the player through a phone. The wrist injury arrived after that separation, giving every old disagreement a new meaning. Ferrero's previous concerns about workload and balance began to sound prophetic to people who already believed Alcaraz's camp had removed the one person willing to control him. That conclusion goes further than the facts. Ferrero was not present when the wrist failed in Barcelona. No verified statement connects the injury to a training dispute, a family decision, or the coaching change. Professional tennis places enormous strain on the wrist, and injuries can occur even under careful management. Still, the emotional question remains valid. Would Ferrero have handled Alcaraz's impatience differently? Nobody outside the relationship can answer that with certainty. Ferrero knew when to challenge him, but their disagreements prove that knowledge did not always produce agreement. Samuel Lopez and the current medical team also know the player well. Describing them as silent is fair. Describing them as careless would require evidence that has not appeared. Sinner supplies the pressure that makes their silence difficult to maintain. When Alcaraz disappeared, his rival continued. Sinner had already defeated him in the Monte Carlo final and moved ahead in the rankings. Each tournament Alcaraz missed gave Sinner another opportunity to strengthen his control over the season. The established force kept collecting matches, while the challenger could only rehabilitate. This rivalry has never depended entirely on personal hostility. Its power comes from contrast. Sinner plays with controlled efficiency, measured aggression, and a surface calm that makes difficult tennis appear planned. Alcaraz plays through instinct, variation, and emotional release. Sinner reduces disorder. Alcaraz creates possibilities inside it. The injury attacks the exact quality that separates Alcaraz. A cautious wrist encourages controlled choices. His natural game demands freedom. Watching Sinner win can make medical patients feel like competitive surrender. Rankings continue moving during rehabilitation. Major tournaments do not wait for injured champions. Records absorb absences without explaining them. A player knows that every lost week may alter the balance of a rivalry that could define his career. That is why Ruiz Cotoro's verdict carries more weight than a normal fitness update. He is not examining the wrist in isolation. He is judging it inside a season where Alcaraz can see what he is losing. The doctor's experience with Nadal becomes valuable at precisely this point. Nadal spent years facing the temptation to chase one more event before his body was ready. Sometimes risk produced an unforgettable victory. On other occasions, the price appeared later. His career proved that courage cannot replace healing, even when courage has built the athlete's identity. Ruiz Cotoro's likely message to Alcaraz is therefore less dramatic than the title suggests, but more important for his future. The wrist must satisfy the medical tests before competitive desire receives permission. Training volume must rise gradually. Any reaction must be evaluated before the next stage begins. A tournament can only become realistic after tennis-specific work has been tolerated. He may tell Alcaraz that progress is strong. He may advise further caution. He may permit controlled hitting without approving competition. What he cannot honestly provide is certainty that no relapse will occur. Medical examinations reduce uncertainty. They do not eliminate it. That is also why a return date may remain unpublished after a positive assessment. Permission to begin hitting is not permission to play 5-set tennis. Alcaraz would need to rebuild racket tolerance, serve intensity, timing, and confidence. Practice sets would have to follow. His team would then judge whether the wrist recovered normally after repeated sessions. The first successful day would not settle the question. The response afterward would matter more. This gradual process does not satisfy social media because it contains no single announcement capable of ending the debate. Fans want a green light or a red light. Rehabilitation often operates through smaller changes that remain conditional. The title turns those conditions into a hidden verdict. Ferrero supposedly reveals it, Ruiz Cotoro supposedly delivers it, and the team supposedly keeps it from the public. The real sequence is less convenient. Reports established that a medical examination would guide the next stage. No verified source produced the result Ferrero was alleged to know. No evidence showed that he had spoken privately with the doctor about Alcaraz's wrist. Ferrero reveals something through his history, but it is not a confidential diagnosis. His old role shows why Alcaraz needs someone capable of resisting the urgency created by his own talent. His separation shows how quickly trusted relationships can become complicated when a champion wants greater control. His continuing affection proves that distance did not erase concern. What the team is hiding may simply be information it does not yet possess in final form. That possibility changes the villain in this story. The villain may not be Ferrero, the family, Samuel Lopez, or the medical staff. It may be the demand for certainty inside a recovery that cannot provide it. It may also be the calendar which forces injured athletes to watch their rivals take opportunities that will never return. Alcaraz remains the hero because patience costs him something real. He is not resting during an empty part of the season. He has surrendered title defenses, ranking points, and matches against the opponent shaping his era. Each withdrawal protects the future while damaging the present. Sinner does not need to become a cruel villain for the contrast to work. His success creates the opposing force naturally. He keeps winning because his body allows him to compete. Alcaraz keeps waiting because his wrist has not supplied the same permission. That difference is enough to change rankings, public perception, and the emotional balance of their rivalry. The next meaningful image will not be Alcaraz running without support. It will be Alcaraz striking the ball freely, then returning the following day without a damaging reaction. Even that will represent another stage rather than a guaranteed comeback. A tournament announcement should come after those stages, not before them. Ferrero's relevance will remain because fans remember the version of Alcaraz he helped build. They remember the coach watching from the box, controlling the temperature around a player who could turn joy into brilliance. Seeing Ruiz Couture take responsibility for the next limit naturally invites comparison with the mentor who once managed those boundaries. Yet the clean truth survives the speculation. Ferrero has not publicly revealed what the doctor will tell Alcaraz. No credible evidence proves that the current team is concealing a disastrous diagnosis. What exists is a serious wrist injury, an incomplete public medical picture, and a recovery carrying enormous consequences. That truth does not weaken the story. It makes the central decision more human. Alcaraz must choose whether to treat patience as lost time or as an investment in the player he still wants to become. Nadal's career shows why that choice matters. Sinner's momentum shows why it hurts. Ferrero's absence shows how different the support structure now looks. Ruiz Couture can evaluate the wrist. He cannot remove the frustration, recover the missed tournaments, or guarantee that the rivalry will pause until Alcaraz returns. The final verdict will therefore reveal more than physical progress. It will show whether Alcaraz and his current team can resist the pressure surrounding them. Returning early might satisfy the audience for 1 week. Returning properly could protect the joyful, fearless game that made the audience care in the first place. That is what this examination truly means. It is not a secret message passed from Nadal's doctor to Ferrero. It is a test of whether one of tennis's brightest champions can accept the lesson that every great competitor eventually faces. Sometimes protecting the chase requires standing still. Subscribe if you want the facts behind the noise, and tell me whether Alcaraz should target the earliest possible return or wait until the wrist leaves no reasonable doubt.